Have you ever wondered what a single decision can cost you? Have you ever felt the weight of a secret so heavy it bent your back, even as you smiled for the world? Tell me in the comments. Have you ever been betrayed by someone you loved more than yourself? Before I begin, I want you to tell me something in the comments. What's the one thing you've never told your family? I want to know. I really do. I remember the night the willow tree outside my window wept with me. The rain was coming down in silver sheets, and the wind rattled the old glass panes of my bedroom. I was 83 that year, though my bones felt older, and my heart, well, it was a patchwork of old wounds and stubborn hope. I sat at my little writing desk, the one James built for me when we were newlyweds, and stared at a letter I'd written but never sent. My hands shook as I traced the faded ink, remembering the words I'd never dared to speak aloud. Outside, the willow's branches thrashed as if it too was trying to shake off a memory. That night, I was waiting for a phone call. My granddaughter, Leela, had promised to call after her shift at the hospital. She was the only one who still called, the only one who remembered that I liked to hear about her day, even if I didn't always understand the world she lived in now. But the phone didn't ring. Instead, I sat in the hush of my old house, listening to the storm and the creak of the floorboards, and I thought about the secret I'd kept for 60 years. The secret that had cost me my sister, my home, and the love of my life. I wonder, if you were in my place, would you have told the truth, or would you have carried the burden alone, as I did? Tell me in the comments. I'm curious. Do you know what it's like to hold a secret so long it becomes part of your bones? Have you ever wondered if the truth would set you free, or just shatter what little piece you have left? Tell me in the comments, what's the one thing you wish you could say to someone who's gone? The storm raged on, and I found myself drawn back to that letter. My hands, knotted with age and memory, unfolded the paper for the 100th time. The words blurred, but I knew them by heart. It was a confession written to my sister Ruth, the night she left our family for good. I remember the day she left -1962. The summer the river flooded and the world seemed to come apart at the seams. Ruth was always the wild one, the one with laughter that could fill a room and a temper that could empty it just as fast. We fought that morning over a boy, of all things. I said things I can never take back. She slammed the door, and I never saw her again. I kept that letter, thinking one day I'd find her, or she'd come home, and I'd finally have the courage to hand it over. But the years slipped by, and the letter yellowed, and my heart grew, heavy with regret. Sometimes, late at night, I hear Ruth's voice in the wind, calling me by the nickname only she used. Sometimes I wonder if she ever forgave me, or if she carried her own secrets to the end. Would you have sent the letter, or would you have let the past stay buried? Comment below. I want to know what you would have done. Have you ever watched a river rise, inch by inch, until it swallows everything you thought was safe? Have you ever lost someone in a single moment, and spent a lifetime wondering if you could have changed it? Tell me in the comments, what's the one moment you wish you could go back and do differently? The night Ruth left, the rain didn't stop. By morning, the river behind our house had crept up the banks, turning the backyard into a muddy sea. I remember standing at the window, clutching the curtains, searching for any sign of her. But all I saw was water, and the empty road where she disappeared. My mother was frantic, her hands shaking as she called neighbors, the sheriff, anyone who might have seen Ruth. My father just sat at the kitchen table, staring at his coffee, his face gray and hollow. I wanted to tell them about the fight, about the letter, about the things I'd said that sent Ruth running. but the words stuck in my throat, heavy as stones. The days blurred together. Volunteers came with boats searching the flooded fields and barns. I helped where I could, handing out sandwiches, filling sandbags. But inside I was numb. Every time someone mentioned Ruth's name, I felt a jolt of guilt so sharp it made me dizzy. At night, I lay awake listening to the river, wondering if it had carried my sister away, or if she'd found her way to some new life far from the mess we'd made. I prayed for a sign, a letter, a phone call, anything, but the only answer was the endless rain. Sometimes I think the river took more than Ruth that summer. It took my mother's laughter, my father's strength, and the easy way I used to move through the world. It left me with silence, and a secret I couldn't share. If you were me, would you have confessed? Or would you have let your family believe Ruth just left on her own? Comment below. I want to know what you would have done. Do you know how long a silence can last? Have you ever measured your life in the spaces between words, in the things you never said? Tell me in the comments. Is there someone you wish you'd called, even just once, before it was too late? The river receded, but Ruth did not return. The world moved on, as it always does, but our family was never the same. My mother grew quiet, her hands always busy but her eyes far away. My father worked longer hours, coming home with mud on his boots and exhaustion in his bones. I finished school, got a job at the library, and learned to keep my head down and my heart guarded. Years passed. I watched friends marry, have children, build lives that seemed untouched by tragedy. I smiled at their happiness, but inside I felt like a ghost, drifting through my own story. Every birthday, every Christmas, I set a place for Ruth in my heart, hoping she might walk through the door, older but unchanged. But the only letters that came were bills and advertisements. Sometimes, late at night, I'd take out the letter and read it again, the words blurring with tears. I'd imagine Ruth somewhere far away, maybe in a city, maybe with a family of her own, maybe even happy. I wondered if she ever thought of me, if she hated me, or if she'd forgiven me for the things I said that day. I never told my parents the truth. I let them believe Ruth had left because she was restless, because she wanted more than our small town could offer. I carried that secret like a stone in my pocket, heavy and cold, shaping every step I took. Would you have reached out, after all those years, or would you have let the silence grow, hoping it would protect you from the pain? Comment below. I want to know what you would have done. Have you ever stood at the edge of happiness, knowing a piece of your heart was missing? Have you ever wished you could share your joy with someone who vanished from your life? Tell me in the comments, who do you wish could have been at your happiest moment? Henry and I married in the autumn of 1973, beneath a canopy of golden leaves in the churchyard where my parents had wed. The whole town turned out, it seemed, neighbors, friends, even the librarian who'd given me my first job. My mother wept with pride, my father squeezed my hand, and Henry's laughter rang out like church bells. But as I walked down the aisle, bouquet trembling in my hands, I searched every face for Ruth. I imagined her standing at the back, wild hair tamed, eyes shining with forgiveness. I pictured her slipping into the pew beside my mother, whispering a joke, squeezing my hand as we'd done as girls. But the seat stayed empty, and the ache in my chest was sharper than ever. After the ceremony, as Henry and I danced beneath the harvest moon, I felt both joy and sorrow twined together. I was grateful for the love I'd found, but I mourned the sister I'd lost. I wondered if she'd heard about the wedding, if she'd seen the announcement in the paper, if she'd thought of me at all. That night, as the guests drifted home and the music faded, I sat alone in my wedding dress, the old letter in my lap. I whispered Ruth's name into the darkness, hoping my words would find her wherever she was. Would you have reached out, even after all those years, or would you have let the silence keep growing? Comment below. I want to know what you would have done. Have you ever built a life on hope, even when you knew a part of you was missing? Have you ever tried to fill a silence with laughter, children, and the busy work of living? Tell me in the comments, what do you do to keep old wounds from swallowing you whole? Henry and I made a good life together. We bought a little house on Maple Lane, painted the kitchen yellow, and planted a garden that bloomed brighter every year. I worked at the library Henry taught at the school, and soon our days were filled with the noise and chaos of children. Our son, Peter, arrived first, with his father's gentle eyes. Then came our daughter, Leela, who had Ruth's wild hair and stubborn spirit. I poured myself into motherhood, into PTA meetings and bake sales, into bedtime stories and scraped knees. I tried to be the kind of mother who never let her children doubt they were loved. But sometimes, when the house was quiet and the children were asleep, I'd find myself standing at the window, watching the moon rise over the willow tree, wondering if Ruth was out there somewhere, looking at the same sky dot every birthday, every Christmas. I sent a card to the last address I had for her. Sometimes they came back, unopened and marked return to sender. Sometimes they vanished into the void, and I let myself hope that maybe, just maybe, she'd read my words and know I was sorry that Henry never pressed me to talk about Ruth, but he always held me close on the nights when the ache was too much to bear. She'll come home when she's ready, he'd whisper, and when she does, we'll welcome her with open arms. Would you have kept reaching out, year after year, or would you have let the past stay buried for the sake of your own peace? Comment below. I want to know what you would have done. I remember the spring when the willow tree, once so barren and sorrowful, began to bloom again. It was as if the world itself had decided to offer me a gentle, green forgiveness. I was older than my hair, more silver than gold, my hands marked by years of work and worry, yet as I stood beneath those new, trembling leaves, I felt a stirring of hope I hadn't known in decades. The children my own and those from the village would gather round me, their laughter echoing through the garden. I'd tell them stories, some true, some borrowed from dreams, and sometimes I'd catch myself glancing at the willow's branches, half expecting to see my sister's face peeking through the leaves, just as she did when we were girls. One afternoon, as the sun painted everything in honeyed light, I found a small, folded note tucked into the bark of the willow. My heart pounded as I opened it, the paper trembling in my hands. The handwriting was unfamiliar, but the words were meant for me. Some wounds heal in silence, some in song. Let the willow remember and let you begin again. I wept then, not the bitter tears of loss, but the sweet, aching tears of release. I realized that while the river had taken much, it had not taken everything. I still had stories to tell, love to give, and a life to live, even if it was a life shaped by longing. As dust settled, I sat beneath the willow, humming the lullaby my mother once sang. The children joined in, their voices weaving through the branches, and for the first time in years, I felt whole. I asked myself, and now I ask you, have you ever found hope in the most unexpected places? What small miracles have helped you heal? If you've ever felt the world begin again, even after heartbreak, share your story in the comments. Your words might be the note someone else needs to find. I remember the summer after the willow bloomed, when the world seemed to hold its breath, waiting for something to change. I was older then, my hair more silver than gold, my hands marked by the years. Yet, the ache in my heart for my sister, for the life we might have shared, had not faded. It was on a quiet afternoon, as the sun filtered through the willow's new leaves, that I found myself drawn to its shade once more. I sat beneath its branches, the air thick with the scent of earth and memory. My fingers traced the grooves in the bark, and I whispered the secrets I had never dared to speak aloud. I told the willow of my regrets, of the letter I never sent, of the river that had taken so much from me. I spoke of the man with the red umbrella, of the wedding that felt incomplete, of the years spent building a life while waiting for a return that never came. As I spoke, a gentle breeze stirred the branches, and for a moment I felt as if the willow was listening, truly listening. I closed my eyes and let the memories wash over me, each one a thread in the tapestry of my life. When I opened them again, I noticed something I had never seen before. A small, heart-shaped knot in the wood, right at the place where my sister and I used to carve our initials as children. It was as if the tree itself had kept our secret safe. All these years, holding onto the love and the pain, the hope and the sorrow. I pressed my palm against the knot, and for the first time in decades, I allowed myself to weep, not just for what was lost, but for all that had been found in the spaces between. Have you ever found a secret hidden in a place you thought you knew by heart? Sometimes, the world keeps our memories safe until we're ready to find them again. I remember the morning after the truth came out. The world felt impossibly still. The willow tree, once a silent witness to my grief, now seemed to shimmer with a gentle promise. I sat beneath its branches, the grass cool and damp beneath my hands, and let the memories wash over me, painful, yes, but also strangely sweet. For the first time in decades, I felt the weight of my secrets begin to lift, replaced by something lighter, almost hopeful. As the sun crept higher, I heard the laughter of children drifting from the lane. Their voices, bright and unburdened, reminded me of a time when I too believed in magic and second chances. I closed my eyes and let myself imagine what it would be like to start anew, to forgive myself for the things I could not change. That afternoon, I found a small package nestled in the crook of the willow's roots. It was wrapped in faded blue cloth, tied with a bit of twine. My hands trembled as I untied the knot, revealing a bundle of old letters, my letters, the ones I thought I'd lost to the river all those years ago. Each page was worn and water-stained, but the words were still legible, a testament to the love and longing I'd poured into them. I wept as I read, not just for what was lost, but for what had survived. The willow, it seemed, had kept my secrets safe, waiting for the day I was ready to face them. In that moment, I understood. The tree was not just a symbol of sorrow, but of resilience, of the quiet strength that comes from enduring. Have you ever found something you thought was lost forever, or received a sign when you needed it most? Share your story in the comments. I'd love to hear about the gifts life has given you, even in the most unexpected ways. I remember the evening as if it were painted in gold and lavender, the kind of dusk that makes the world hush and listen. I was sitting on the porch, my knitting forgotten in my lap, when I saw a figure walking up the lane. At first, I thought it was Henry returning from the store, but the gait was unfamiliar, hesitant, as if each step was a question. My heart fluttered with a strange anticipation. The willow tree, now lush and full, cast long shadows across the yard. The figure paused beneath its branches, looking up as if searching for something in the leaves. I stood, my knees creaking, and called out, "Can I help you, dear?" The woman turned. She was younger than me, but her eyes held a sorrow I recognized, a sorrow that had lived in my own reflection for decades. She clutched a small, weathered satchel to her chest. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The air was thick with the scent of honeysuckle and the weight of unspoken words. Finally, she stepped forward, her voice trembling. "I'm looking for someone. I think I think she might be you. My breath caught. I searched her face for a memory, a resemblance, a sign. She reached into her satchel and pulled out a faded photograph, two little girls beneath a willow tree, arms wrapped around each other, grinning at the world. My hands shook as I took the photo. Ruth, I whispered, hope and fear warring in my chest. She smiled, tears glistening in her eyes. No, but I knew her. She saved me once, a long time ago. She told me about you. The world seemed to tilt. I invited her inside, my mind racing with questions. Over tea, she told me her story, how Ruth had found her, lost and alone, and given her shelter, kindness, and the promise of a family she'd never known. Ruth had spoken of me often, she said, and had always hoped I would forgive her for leaving. As the sun dipped below the horizon, I felt a peace I hadn't known in years. Ruth was gone, but her love had rippled outward, touching lives I'd never imagined. I realized then that grief and hope could live side by side, and that sometimes the answers we seek come in the form of new beginnings. Before the visitor left, she pressed a letter into my hand, Ruth's handwriting, unmistakable. She wanted you to have this, she said softly. I watched her walk away, the willow's branches swaying gently in the evening breeze. I clutched the letter to my heart, tears streaming down my cheeks, and whispered a thank you to the tree, to Ruth, and to the world for bringing me this gift. And now, dear listener, I wonder, have you ever received a message from the past that changed your present? Share your story in the comments below. I'd love to hear how hope has found you, even in the most unexpected ways. I remember the first time I heard the willow sing. It was a sound that didn't belong to the world of men, but to the world of memory and longing. I was sitting beneath its branches, the evening sun painting the sky in shades of lavender and gold, when the wind began to stir. The leaves trembled, and in their trembling, I heard a melody, soft, mournful, and achingly familiar. It was the song my mother used to hum when she thought no one was listening. A lullaby woven from sorrow and hope, from the ache of loss and the promise of tomorrow. I closed my eyes and let the music wash over me, feeling the years slip away. I was a child again, safe in her arms, the world outside a little home forgotten. But the song was not just for me. It was for all those who had loved and lost, who had carried secrets too heavy to bear. It was for my sister, whose laughter still echoed in the spaces between the notes. It was for my father, who had never learned how to say goodbye. It was for the man with the red umbrella, who had taught me that kindness could bloom even in the harshest winter. As the melody faded, I felt a peace settle over me, a peace I had not known in decades. The willow song was a gift, a reminder that even in the deepest grief, there's beauty. Even in silence, there's music. Even in endings, there are beginnings. I rose from the roots, my heart lighter than it had been in years. I looked back at the house, at the river, at the willow that had watched over us all. I knew that my story was not just mine, but part of a tapestry woven from the lives of everyone I had ever loved. And as I walked back inside, I wondered, what songs do your memories sing to you? What melodies linger in the quiet moments, waiting to be heard? Let me know in the comments. Is there a song, a sound, or a memory that brings you comfort when you need it most? I'd love to hear your stories. I remember that summer evening as if it were yesterday, though the years have blurred so many other memories. The air was thick with the scent of honeysuckle, and the sun was just beginning to dip behind the hills, painting the sky in shades of lavender and gold. I sat beneath the willow, my old bones grateful for the cool grass, and listened to the gentle rustle of its leaves. It was as if the tree itself was whispering secrets, carrying the voices of those I had loved and lost. That night, I made a promise to the willow and to myself. I promised that I would not let regret be the only thing I left behind. I would share my story, every aching part of it, so that Ruth's memory would live on, not as a shadow, but as a light for others to find their way by. I spoke aloud, my voice trembling, telling the willow everything I had never dared to say, my guilt, my longing, my hope that somewhere, somehow, Ruth had found peace. As the stars began to appear, I felt a warmth settle over me, as if invisible arms were wrapping me in comfort. I closed my eyes and let the memories come of laughter shared, of secrets whispered in the dark, of the way Ruth's hair would catch the sunlight and turn to gold. I wept, but the tears were not bitter. They were a release, a letting go of all I had carried for so long. When I finally rose to leave, I pressed my hand to the willow's trunk and felt its steady strength. I knew then that I was not alone. The love I had for Ruth, for Henry, for my children and grandchildren, it was all still here, woven into the very fabric of this place. The willow had kept its promise to me, sheltering my secrets and my sorrows. And now it was my turn to keep my promise to it. So I began to write, each night beneath the willow, my words spilling onto the page like the river that had once taken everything from me. I wrote for Ruth, for myself, and for anyone who might one day sit beneath this tree and wonder about the lives that had passed through its shade. And now, dear listener, I ask you, what promise would you make if you knew the willow was listening? What story would you share if you believed it could heal an old wound? I remember that night as if it were yesterday, though the years have softened its edges, like the willow's branches swaying gently in the wind. The house was quiet, save for the ticking of the old clock in the hallway and the distant hum of crickets outside my window. I sat alone at my kitchen table, a cup of tea cooling in my hands, the moonlight spilling across the faded linoleum. My heart was heavy, burdened by memories I had carried for far too long, regrets, words unsaid, moments lost to pride and fear. I thought of my sister, of the river, of the willow tree that had watched over us through every season of our lives. I thought of the letter I never sent, the wedding she missed, the years we spent apart for so long. I had blamed myself for the silence that grew between us, for the pain that lingered like a shadow in the corners of my heart. But that night, something shifted. Maybe it was the way the moonlight danced on the willow's leaves outside, or the gentle creak of the house settling around me, as if it, too, was ready to let go. I closed my eyes and let the memories wash over me, not to punish myself, but to finally understand. I saw my younger self, stubborn and scared, and I forgave her. I forgave the woman I had become, too, for all her mistakes and all her longing. Tears slipped down my cheeks, silent and warm. I whispered an apology into the quiet, not just to my sister, but to myself. The weight I had carried for so many years began to lift, replaced by a bittersweet peace. I realized that forgiveness isn't a gift you give to others, it's a gift you give to yourself, a way to set your own heart free. That night, I slept with the window open, letting the willow song drift in on the breeze. And for the first time in a long while, I dreamed not of what I had lost, but of what I still had: the memories, the love, and the hope that tomorrow could be gentler than yesterday. Asterisk, have you ever found it hard to forgive yourself for something in your past? What helped you finally let go? Or are you still searching for that peace? Share your story in the comments. I'd love to listen. Ah, my dears, as the years slipped by, the willow's branches grew heavy with memories, and so did my heart. I became the old woman in the cottage by the river, the one children whispered about, the one who always had a story and a cup of tea ready for anyone brave enough to knock. My hair turned silver, My hands grew soft and wrinkled, but my eyes still searched the horizon for Ruth, even as I learned to let her go. I spent my days tending the garden, coaxing wildflowers to bloom where sorrow once took root. The willow, now ancient and wise, watched over me like a gentle guardian. Sometimes, I'd find little trinkets at its base, a child's ribbon, a smooth stone, a feather left by the village children who'd come to play and listen to my tales. I'd tell them about Ruth, about love and loss, about forgiveness and hope. I'd see their eyes widen, their hearts open, and I'd know that the story was no longer just mine. One autumn evening, as golden leaves danced in the wind, a young girl named Elsie came to me, clutching a notebook. "Will you teach me to write stories?" she asked, her voice trembling with hope. I saw a spark in her, the same wild longing I'd once seen in Ruth, so I took her hand, and together we sat beneath the willow, letting the world fall away as we spun new tales from old wounds. The years rolled on, and the willow's roots grew deeper, entwined with the lives of all who sought comfort in its shade. I watched as Elsie grew into a woman, her stories carrying pieces of my heart out into the world. I watched as the village changed, as new faces came and old ones faded. But the willow remained a living testament to the power of memory, forgiveness, and love. And now, as I sit here, pen in hand, I realize that my story is not just about loss, but about the legacy we leave behind. The willow's legacy, Ruth's legacy, my own. It's in every story told, every heart healed, every child who dares to dream beneath the sheltering branches. So, my dear listeners, what legacy do you hope to leave behind? Is there a story in your heart waiting to be shared? Tell me in the comments. Let's keep the willow song alive together. I remember the day I discovered the willow's secret, as if it were yesterday. The air was thick with the scent of rain, and the world felt hushed, as though it were holding its breath just for me. I was older than my hair silver, my hands marked by time, but the ache for Ruth had never faded. That afternoon, I wandered to the willow, cane in hand, my steps slow but determined. As I settled beneath its sweeping branches, I noticed something I'd never seen before. A small, heart-shaped knot in the bark, just at eye level. My fingers traced its outline, and suddenly, a memory flooded back. Ruth and I as girls, carving our initials into the tree, promising to always find our way back to each other. Tears welled in my eyes, not just for what was lost, but for the love that had endured quietly all these years. I spoke aloud, my voice trembling. "Ruth, if you can hear me, I hope you know I never stopped looking for you. I never stopped loving you." The wind rustled the branches, and for a moment, I felt her presence, gentle, forgiving, and warm. Have you ever found a sign from someone you've lost? Something that made you believe they were still with you? Sometimes, the world gives us little miracles, if only we're willing to see them.